Alright. I went I opened my YouTube on my YouTube channel account um because I was going to start a new series and I just finished recording for that and I saw this video and it was so fucking like it was on my front page. Like I saw it immediately. Um and so I came back for it because the title is typical of Answers in Genesis, but it's provocative and just it's inciting and it's inflammatory and I just it's too good not to pass up. You know, it's too good not to pass up because it's free content, people. It's free content. And so with my great pleasure and great sadness, I bring once again debunking answers in Genesis. They just don't stop, do they?
The Tale of the Heike is considered one of the great classics of medieval Japanese literature. It's primarily an epic about samurai warrior culture, which ultimately laid the groundwork for Japanese Bushido ideology, or what's known as the Way of the Warrior. The Heike.
Very fascinating. I fucking love Japanese culture, man. It's definitely problematic in places, but that's everybody's culture. Um, but it's definitely very interesting. If you are interested in culture and like history, there are a couple of channels I used to watch. I forget what they're called. But there's a guy who I remember this because I kept getting notifications for it for forever. The guy who does the videos on, I think it's a novel called Demigods and Semi-Devils or something similar. He has a lot of interesting content about Japanese culture. I definitely think you should go check it out.
He is roughly divided into three sections. It includes a number of love stories and features some very memorable characters, such as the arrogant, evil, and ruthless central figure of the first section, Taira no Kiramori, who's described as so consumed by the fires of hatred that his fevered body won't cool even while immersed in water after death.
I fucking love like how people describe things in ancient literature because that's some cool shit right there. That's pun unintended, but that's some cool shit right there. That's awesome.
Death. It's pretty
I can't wait for them to completely ruin this.
theatrical stuff. Of course, a good drama usually includes some.
My God, he's really making himself comfortable, isn't he? God damn. You enjoying that chair? What's your name? Calvin? You enjoying that chair, Calvin?
Pivotal action scenes, and the Heike doesn't disappoint. It includes a central confrontation based in real history between the imperial rulers of Japan, the Taira clan, and the Minamoto clan, which
Yes, fiction, based in real history. I wonder where that's familiar.
lead to the famous Battle of Den-Ura on April 24th, 1185 AD. The ruling Taira clan, also known as the Heike, keep that in mind for later, had ruled Japan for many decades and was led by their child emperor, Antoku. But being massively outnumbered in this battle, they were soundly defeated. Now, as the legendary
Yes, tactics play a very, very important role in war. Numbers aren't everything.
part of the story goes. In a climactic moment, seeing their doom was inevitably upon them, General Tokiko, rather than allowing the 7-year-old emperor to be captured by the opposing forces, leaps into the water with him, drowning him, with most loyal members and generals of the Taira clan following them through their death with honor.
Yes, that's also something that's very interesting about older cultures. They viewed death, or some older cultures, they viewed an honorable death as very, very important. And many, including, I'm sure, these people as well, viewed an honorable death way better than being captured and staying alive and living a miserable life.
Legend says that Antoku later came to be worshipped as Mizo Nukami, the god of water. And this is where the tale begins to relate to our topic, the question of ultimate origins.
This simple but brilliant trick allows hackers to drain your
Oh
bank account in 30
god.
seconds. If you own a credit card,
Dude, fucking ads ever since AI have gotten so much more lazy.
You see, Hycopsis japonica, or what is known as dorip, is a species of crab native to Japan, and it has a shell that bears a pattern resembling a human face, which many relate to the face of an angry samurai, hence the nickname.
There are many creatures in the wild that have bodies shaped or colored in such a way that they resemble human faces.
The samurai crab. And it was once said that these crustaceans were ghostly reincarnations of the Heike warriors defeated at the Battle of Dan no Ura, transformed into crabs in that watery grave that each bear the grotesque visage of an armored samurai's face. The Heike.
And this is where folklore and superstition often very much so as interesting as it is to read about and hear about, it it really just it doesn't have any place in science.
crab. As a matter of fact, in the 1964 Japanese anthology film Kwaidan, the narrator recounts the story of the Battle of Dan no Ura and explains the myth, along with some prominent footage of the crabs being illustrated. Now, how does this relate to the issue of Genesis creation versus the evolutionary story so commonly held in our culture today?
Well, I can see how I can easily twist that as a jab at you, but I'm not going to do that because that would be really irresponsible and intellectually bankrupt. Let's see if you have the fucking foresight to not do that.
Well, there have been a vast number of iconic but often very misleading and sometimes downright fraudulent evidences used over the years to convince people of the story of evolution. Peppered.
That's absolutely batshit crazy. How does that have anything to do with evolution evidence being fraudulent? I'm using air quotes, by the way. How does that have anything to do with that?
Moths, Piltdown Men, Haeckel's embryo drawings, the best.
Okay, so already right off the bat, this is absolutely awful. First off, the moths are a very, very good example of evolution, which the only thing I've heard Answers in Genesis say about that is that some scientists faked the photos because moths don't regularly land on trees, which is really a really dumb point that has absolutely nothing to do with anything on that topic. Um, and yeah, the moths are a very good example of that. Just because a lot of the useful images that they had in textbooks were of the moths landing on trees does not mean that that was the only evidence. In fact, there were mountains of other evidence. But if you don't know about the moths, basically it's an example of evolutionary drift. Wait, no, that's not the right terminology. It's an example. Is it evolutionary drift? I don't know. I'm not 100% familiar with the terminology, but it's an example of natural selection where, because the environment changed, because of, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it was an increase in coal power production, where a lot more coal was being used, and so there was a lot more soot in the area, and so the light-colored moths that used to be able to blend in with like snow ended up dying away because like they were much easier to spot in areas that were now blackened by soot, and so the darker colored moths became more and more because they survived to produce more offspring. Um, let's see, there were
Evolution.
three there.
Peppered moths, Piltdown.
Piltdown Man was an example of science immediately correcting itself, but the media getting to it too quickly and reporting on false findings. If you actually look into the story of Piltdown Man, pretty much nobody in the scientific community, except the people who fabricated it, believed that it was an actual an actual find, right? Um, it just got blown way out of proportion way too quickly, and the media did what the media did and reported on things they don't understand and ended up reporting false information.
Man, Haeckel's embryo.
Haeckel's embryo drawings, they weren't proven false at all. They were great examples for their time. It's just we have better, more accurate imagery now that is better than a few drawings. His his drawings were still groundbreaking and incredibly useful in their time. We just don't use them anymore because we have more accurate information. It's like drawing a straight line and then with your free hand, right? And then, it's still a straight line, but it's got a little bit of deviation, which happens when you try to freehand draw when you're not an expert. It's like the difference between that and like taking a ruler and drawing along the ruler. That's going to be a much more straight line. It's just the first line was still straight. It's just not the straightest line you could have. And so we swapped it out for the ruler line, basically.
Drawings, the vestigial appendix, etc.
This is also a fundamentally flawed argument by Answers in Genesis. They like to act as if, because many of the organs that we thought were vestigial actually have a use now, actually have a use that we can understand now, um, just because a lot of them do have use, they substitute a lot for all. One very clearly useless organ is something that I actually have, and a good portion of the population actually do not have, because it's so useless that it's atrophied to the point where a good portion of the population straight up don't have it. It's a tendon between your wrist and your elbow. It runs right down the middle of, if you look palm up, your forearm, you might have it, you might not. It's, if you really pay attention, there's a tendon that will bulge a little bit there, and is actually so useless that if you get some sort of tendon damage in a different part of your body, people, doctors, will take that and put it in the place where you have the tendon damage because it would actually serve a purpose in the place where you got tendon damage, whereas it does not right now. Um, yeah. Um, Vestigial organs that actually do have a use, um, are actually examples of evolution. It's examples of evolution tinkering with what was already there and giving it a new use. The appendix didn't used to be a packet of all of your necessary gut bacteria. It used to be something else.
Evolutionary evidences have come and gone over time, many of them even having been soundly rebutted and thrown out by evolution-believing scientists themselves. But despite
Yeah, this is, once again, he's he's twisting scientists' words in a way that makes it sound like they agree with him, which is just flat out not true. It's another example of science basically being mostly right but slightly wrong in one area, and so they change it, they make the line just that little bit straighter, you know? They make that line just that little bit straighter.
this, certain prize horses in the evolutionary stable of ideas still persist in textbooks,
He's gonna talk about horse evolution, isn't he?
video programs, and other evolutionary presentations to this day. And oftentimes, even if they're no longer accepted in the mainstream of modern evolutionary thinking, they're still stuck in people's minds as being authentic and persuasive, as they never check to see whether they were simply victims of the fake news of the day many years ago. And the hiking
Once again, he is once again basically saying because we tweaked our information just to be that little bit more accurate, the previous solution, the previous answer that we had is completely wrong because we changed our answer. But that's just simply not true. We tweaked the wording a little bit. We tweaked the wording a little bit, and the previous misquotations by the media we're basically saying the media paraphrased. That paraphrasing is not true. This is what it actually is. And then the media turns around and goes, previous information is wrong, when it's not. We tweaked our wording a little bit. It's not our fault that you were paraphrasing it wrong, dude. That's why I fucking hate the media. Because they paraphrase shit, and then the people explaining that stuff paraphrase it again, and it gets paraphrased until it's not fucking true.
crab is just one such example of evidence for naturalism that's persisted in evolutionary lore since 1952, when the grandson of Charles Darwin's bulldog T.H. Huxley, Julian Huxley, published an article titled Evolution's Copycats. His goal was to use an example of natural selection that could be easily
I'd like to point out that he is bringing up an example of a random dude who has vague connection to an actual scientist in history over 100, no, wait, he said 1950, didn't he? Close to 100 years ago.
understood to explain its ability to
Mind you, while evolution as a science was in its infancy.
cause creatures to adapt. then extrapolate that idea to try to persuade his audience that all of life's incredible design could be explained naturalistically through evolutionary processes, reinforcing his atheistic views. Huxley's original article in Life magazine described how he believed these crabs came by such a striking feature, and his argument was basically as follows.
Day 3,
And
waiting for lightning. Starting to think there's a better...
I want you to understand that before we even listen to Calvin's explanation of this dude's point, Answers in Genesis has misquoted, misunderstood, and strawman argumented all the way to the point that they've gotten to here, okay? The chances of this being an actually truthful representation of what this person's actual point is slim at best.
When superstitious Japanese fishermen saw crabs with any likeness to a samurai's mask, they threw them back, benefiting crabs with a face, resulting in more and more crabs with a more clearly designed samurai mask over time. Interestingly,
This is actually, you know what? That's a very, very good point. I'm actually impressed. Although that looks like it's a quote. But yeah, if crabs that just so happened to have a back that like just a little bit looked like a samurai's face, and that gave them the chance to live on and produce offspring, yeah, more crabs with samurai's faces would be like with with backs that look like samurai's faces would be born. It's an actual selection pressure towards like crabs having backs that look like samurai faces. It's actual selection pressure. Now, this may or may not have happened, but if it did happen, it would be a very good example of selection pressure based on interferences.
he reasoned that the resemblance of these crabs' carapace to an angry Japanese warrior was far too specific and detailed to be accidental, and thus could only have been brought about by means of natural selection operating over many centuries. The caption on a Heike crab picture in Huxley's original article.
So, I was really thinking if I wanted to touch on this, but, he said that Huxley thought that it was just too, it was too specific. I don't know if he's gonna misrepresent this, um, so I'm gonna explain it before he does. Basically, the way natural selection works is random mutation, right? Random mutation happens all the time. In fact, you have a few hundred random mutations in you from when you were born, which means your DNA is not 100% half your mom's, half your dad's. You have a few hundred random mutations on your own, just from being born into existence. And basically, over time, those random mutations will produce phenotypic changes. And basically, what that means is phenotypic changes is basically a change that you can actually see on the level of the entire creature. So, a good example of this would be the pattern on the crab's back looking like a samurai's face. That would be a phenotypic change as a result of random mutation, right? And so that phenotypic change, based on the mutation, would stay around because the fishermen toss the crabs back into the water, right? Because of the superstition, they thought it was either cursed or they thought it would be disrupting the dead. Who knows? but it's a good example of human interference causing actual selection pressure towards a creature's evolutionary development.
Reads, superstitious Japanese people do not eat haiki crab because its shell appears to be imprinted with the likeness of a medieval warrior. Now, it's easy to see how this example of evolution in action came to be so popular. It's pretty logical, has an interesting story attached, and has some cool historical details embedded within it that make it.
It's likely what happened. It explains what likely happened. Now, there obviously is a chance it didn't happen, but it's explained in a way that is how science actually, it's how evolution works. And so it's something that very well could have happened, and no doubt happened at some point in our human existence dominating this planet. It's likely something that happened at least once or twice with different species.
Very memorable. Even though most informed modern creationists seeing this today would likely be yawning at this supposed proof of evolution.
Yeah, because you dipshits don't understand it. Because you don't care to understand it. If you don't want to understand something, you shouldn't be trying to debunk it. If you don't understand something, you can never truly understand if it's wrong or not, because you don't understand what it is to begin with. You scoff at it because at the very beginning it disproves your entire worldview. And thus you make no effort to actually learn what it is, and so you never actually have any chance at debunking it.
Because they understand natural selection only allows creatures to adapt within limits and doesn't cause the types of changes that could evolve anything in the particles to people sense.
Which you have absolutely no evidence of. I'm not gonna take trust me, bro, from an organization that is known for lying their asses off in misrepresenting the basics of science.
Many people back then bought it as strong evidence for the story of evolution. And it's
Because it is. They didn't buy into it, they understood that it was factual, and they understood, hey, that's probably what happened.
acceptance continued to grow even more, likely because of its being promoted by one of the most prominent evolutionary popularizers of the 1970s, Carl Sagan. Both in his book and in his Cosmos TV series, Sagan argued like this. How does it come about that the face of a warrior is cut on the carapace of a Japanese crab? How could it be? The answer seems to be that humans made this face.
Okay, he's likely about to make some stupid remark on, the, because if you understand how this happened, you'll understand this quote. But he is probably going to make some snide jab at that last line, because he's going to nitpick, um, he's going to nitpick it out of context, basically. That's what's going to happen. Watch it.
If you're a crab and your carapace is
Or
just
maybe not.
ordinary,
Maybe not. Maybe I've thought too low of you, Calvin.
the humans are going to eat you. But if it looks a little bit like a face, they'll throw you back, and you'll be able to have lots of nice little baby crabs that all look just like you.
Which is a good explanation.
Well, at the time, this all seemed pretty powerful to many a layperson and science student alike. But as we're about to see, aside from the historical details about the battle of the two clans, it's a complete fabrication. But it's
Oh boy, here we go. It's a complete fabrication. What's your evidence for that, bro?
one that many uninformed skeptics still bring up as supposed scientific proof of evolution, and a reason to deny the God of the Bible. Now, as mentioned, even if true, this example of natural selection would be no big deal anyway, because natural selection is a process that selects from genetic information already available within the DNA of a creature, whereas what evolution requires is brand new genetic information.
He is splitting hairs between micro and macro evolution. Why do I fucking do this? If you don't know, microevolution causes macroevolution. They are not separate things. Microevolution happening over a long time causes macroevolution.
For never before seen forms, functions, and features to arise de novo. However, it's still influential among the uninformed because it can help evolutionists make the takeaway point that because this example of apparent design can be caused by selection, belief in God is not needed to explain any so-called design in nature. They argue design is simply illusionary and can be caused by chance and circumstance given sufficient time.
Because it can.
Huxley actually made this point in his original article by segueing from the samurai crab example to several others, stating, "There are plenty of other equally surprising examples of animals or plants acquiring a protective resemblance to other animals or plants or to inanimate objects." Of course, the more astute here will realize
Yeah, it's called Batesian mimicry, and it's actually really, really cool.
the rather deceptive nature of this debate tactic. You simply begin with an example you claim has been proven, to therefore knowing that several other examples of this must also have happened, which weren't observed.
No, many examples of Batesian mimicry have been observed. And on top of that, if you find something that also looks like something to protect itself, it is also likely due to Batesian mimicry. Obviously, you would have to actually look into that and prove it, but going forward with the idea that it is likely Batesian mimicry without being certain of it is not a foolish thing at all, because we know this mechanism, we know how it works, we know that it is the likely solution, it is likely what happened, and so because we understand many of these things, we understand that it's likely what happened.
Of course. The most
Obviously, once we get the details, we tweak it a little bit and make that line just that little bit straighter.
incredible thing is, none of that matters anyway, because the whole man crab myth and its related evidences are a complete sham. Listen to the following quotes from Dr. Joel Martin, analyzing the literature describing the supposed samurai crabs. Interesting reading, but it isn't true.
So, how waterproof is the bearskin heavy storm packable rain jacket? Why not?
Now, for those
Let's see. Joel W. Martin. The samurai crab. Here we go. Let's look up that quote. Joel W. Martin accidentally fat fingered the caps lock. Joel W. Martin, the samurai crab. The samurai crab. What does that say? Terra 31. Number 4. Number 4. Quote. There we go. This is the exact one. Oh, this is from creation.com. God damn it. It's gonna be cut out of context, isn't it? Damn, my internet is real slow, isn't it? Oh, did my internet just die? Oh, there we go. By Calvin Smith. Dude quoted his own article. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have confidence that this is going to be in context. Not this. That's a lot. I'm not reading through that shit. Alright, alright. Let's read up on Joel W. Martin instead. Because I can't seem to find the quote from anyone other than creationists, which happens a little bit, which is pretty annoying when it happens. Joel W. Martin is an American marine biologist and invertebrate zoologist who is currently chief of the Division of Invertebrate Studies and curator of Crustacea at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. His main area of research is morphology and systematics of marine decapod crustaceans, crabs, shrimps, lobsters, and their relatives. Martin received a doctorate, from the Florida State University in 1986. He has published more than 100 scientific articles and books mainly on morphology, natural history, taxonomy, and evolutionary relationships of both decapods and branchiopods, I think that says, of ephemeral pools. His work also includes studies on the animals inhabiting deep sea, hydrothermal vents, and cold seeps. He is perhaps best known for his 2001 publication of an updated classification of recent crustaceans, in addition to his research on invertebrates. Oh, marine. That's an R and an I, not an N. Okay. Marine invertebrates. He has been active on communicating questions of global biodiversity and on the history of interaction of science and religious faith. Let's see. Alright, how about we do a simple search? Does that person, oh no, that's not what I wanted, believe in evolution? There you go. He believes in evolution. So, how about, Calvin, instead of pulling one quote from a dude who believes in evolution, and taking it out of context, why don't you actually read up on his actual research so that you can actually familiarize yourself with evolution? I would
Evolutionists
say
who
that the likely reason he was saying that it isn't true is not because the mechanism isn't true, but because the specific circumstances aren't true. I saw a little piece in one of the search results that said that the crabs weren't used as food, right? So I think the likely reason why he was saying that isn't true is because people didn't tend to eat those crabs to begin with, which simply means that the faces, or the backs resembling faces, was simply a coincidence. It happens.
like to differ, understand something. This
Oh, for fuck's sake, where's the sound?
isn't an idle comment from
Oh, god fucking damn it. Alright. I didn't want to continue doing this video anyway. It looks like the sound is fucked. You guys might be able to hear it, but I can't hear it. Oh, you know what? Is it this? Is it because I accidentally fat-fingered?
some crazy
It is. Okay, well, I don't want to continue this video anyway. I may pick up this particular video again. It's been 41 minutes. I'm a go. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. Feel free to comment. It really does help. YouTube doesn't actually show your shit to more people unless people interact on your video. So like the maximum impressions I get per video, even if I upload at the optimal times, I only get about 500 impressions on each video. If people don't react on it. So please, it really does help. It really does. And yeah, go check out Force Valkai and Mini Minuteman. They do this shit way better than I do, that's for sure. I actually get quite a lot of viewers off of Mini Minuteman's videos, and that fills me with all kinds of joy, because it means that my content is deemed so similar to his that my content is actually recommended at the end of his videos, and it's fucking great.